Okay, we're going to be looking at Jefferson's actions. If you don't have a highlighter, it's in the bucket. The second one, right there. I was saying earlier in class that if you've ever been watching the news, there's a lot that they do with Trump. They say Trump said something back in Obama's administration, and then they have a quote of him today doing the opposite. And so what we're going to look at is Thomas Jefferson, because Thomas Jefferson faced the same thing. But before we could look at his actions to figure out if he's consistent or inconsistent, because this is what we're going to be looking at. Jefferson was therefore consistently inconsistent. It's easy to quote one Jefferson to refute another. We're going to evaluate his actions and determine is he consistent or inconsistent based on his political beliefs. But before I could look at his actions, I need to look at his beliefs. So you have this letter. It's a letter. The first part is just an introduction. This is a letter to Eldridge Gary where he's going to outline his beliefs. So this starts off with the outer in. And this is just an introduction. The Jeffersonian Republican Party gained control of the executive and legislative branches of the central government in the national election of 1800. They've been able to convince a majority of the American voters that the Federalist policies, if continued, would produce disastrous results for the nation. The Jeffersonian Republican victory at the polls ended the Federalist virtual monopoly of the political power of the nation. During the years that the Federalist leaders directed the affairs of the nation, they worked to strengthen the central government, to establish a sound fiscal system, and develop a strong economic relationships with Europe. These were the years of increasing political rivalry that resulted in the conflict of two philosophies of government. The Jeffersonian Republican ideal emphasized the advantages of local and state control in government, while the Federalists emphasized a more national approach to the political power. The decisions made by Jefferson, Madison, and Monroe, regardless of their own desire for change, were influenced by programs launched by the Federalist era. These Republican presidents were quick to realize that their change was based on unforeseen events and circumstances that challenges their political leadership as well as specific political philosophy of party platforms. That was a lot of keys. The Virginia dynasty or presidents, which led the country from 1800 to 1824, was faced with a series of domestic and foreign crises. The Napoleonic Wars, the War of 1812, the British economic competition, the Panic of 1819, the European intervention in the Western Hemisphere necessitated momentous decisions by Republican leaders. The decisions resulted in broad changes in American society. Changes occurred in areas of taxation, foreign policy, expansion, internal improvements, war, finance, slavery, manufactured voting, and the structure of political parties. In early 1799, as he prepared for the presidential election of 1800, Thomas Jefferson wrote a summary of the political principles that he had developed during his 25 years of service to his country. Jefferson included a statement of principles in a letter to Eldridge Gary, and prominent Massachusetts Republicans. So now we're going to highlight his beliefs. To Eldridge Gary, I do then, with sincere zeal, wish an inviolable preservation of our present Constitution, according to the true sense which it was adopted by the states, and that it which was advocated by its friends, and not that which it is its enemies apprehend, who therefore become its enemies. I'm opposed to monarchizing its features. Is that a belief?
Yes.
Yes. What does that mean? Does he want to be a king or not a king?
Not a king.
Okay. I am for preserving states' power. So whose rights does he believe in? States. And not yielding them to the Union. And to the legislator of the Union its constitutional share of division of power. So who does he believe should have power? Legislator. I am not for transferring all the powers of the states to the general government. So whose rights again does he believe? States. I am for a government rigorously frugal and simple. What does frugal and simple mean? Cheap. Okay, does he want to have extravagant parties? No. Okay. Applying all the possible savings of public revenue to discharge the national debt. So does he want debt or no debt?
No debt.
Okay, so discharge the national debt. And not for the multiplication of officers and salaries merely to make partisan. I don't know if y'all understand what that means. Does he want to make a bigger government or a smaller government?
Smaller.
And so he doesn't want the multiplication of officers. I don't know if you know what partisan means. So partisan means party. So President Trump came to office, did he keep all of Obama's people? No, he got him out and he brought in who? His people. That's partisan politics, okay? Coming in and bringing his people. And for increasing every device, the public debt as it being a public blessing. So does he like debt?
No.
I am for relying for internal defense on a militia solely. Does he want a big military? Okay? Till actual evasion. For such a naval force is only as to protect our coasts and harbors from such deprivations as we have experienced. I am not for a standing army in time of peace, which may overawe the public sentiment. I'm not for a navy, which by its own expense and external wars was, which it will implicate us. It will grind us into public burdens and sink us under them. I am for free commerce. What does commerce mean?
Trade.
Trade. With all nations. Okay, I should probably highlight with all nations, right? Being exclusive. Political connection with one. And little or no diplomatic establishment. I am for linking ourselves by new treaties with I am not for linking ourselves by new treaties with the quarrels of Europe. For entering that field of solid to preserve their balance, or joining the confederacy of kings to war against their liberty. I am for freedom of religion, freedom of the press, and against all violations to the Constitution. So I'm just going to put, and against all violations of the Constitution by silence, by force, and not by reason, complaint, or criticism, just or unjust, for our citizens against the conduct of their agents. I am for encouraging the progress of science. Do we have another belief? Progress of science. He does not want to move backwards. He wants to move forward. In all its branches, I am not for raising a hue and a cry against the sacred name of the philosophy, for awing the human mind by the stories of the rod head and the bloody bones of the distrust of its own vision, and to repose the implicity on others, to go backwards instead of to go forward, to look for improvement, to believe that government, religion, morality, and every other science were the highest perfections in the darkest ignorance. And nothing can ever be devised more perfect than it was established by our forefathers. To these I will add, I was a sincere well-wisher to the success of the French Revolution. So who does he like?
French.
Okay, so we're gonna just put pro-French. I'm just gonna try to highlight French if it lets me. He's pro-French, and still wish it may end in the establishment of a free and well-ordered republic. I have not been sensible under the atrocities and deprivations which they have committed in our commerce. My first object is my own country. So, does he care about the French first? No, he's all about America first, so let's highlight that. That it may embark my family, my fortune, and my own existence. I am not one of the fathering interests, nor one fiber of attachment out of it, nor a single motion of preference of any other nation to another, but in proportion as they more or less friendly to us. But through deep feeling of injuries in France, I do not think the war is the surest means of redressing them. I did believe the mission sincerely to pose to preserve peace, and would obtain for a peaceful and honorable sentiment and retribution. These, my friend, are my principles. They are unquestionably the principles of the great body of our fellow citizens, and I know there's not one of them which is not yours also. So do we feel firm with his beliefs? Okay, so what we're gonna do, let me not save this. Okay, we are gonna look at his actions. You should have a chart. Does everybody have that chart? The chart says consistent and inconsistent, right? So we're gonna look at events and determine if he was consistent or inconsistent with his beliefs. So our first one, reduce the Army and Navy. One of Jefferson's first actions as president was to reduce the military establishment to a mere police force of 2,500 officers and men. Critics called it penny pinching, but Jefferson's reluctance to invest in soldiers and ships was less about money and then more about Republican ideals. Among his fondest hopes for America was that it might transcend the bloody war and entangling lines of Europe. The United States would set an example for the whole world, forswearing military force and winning friends through peaceful coercion. Also, the Republicans distrusted large standing armies and standing invitations to dictatorships. Consistent or inconsistent? Consistent. So we're going to check consistent because we know his belief said, what did he want? Big military or no military? No military. Small military. Correct, Evan. Let's look at the next one. He keeps the bus, the Bank of the United States. Except for excising the excise tax, Jefferson left the Hamiltonian framework essentially intact. They did not tamper with the Federalist programs for funding the national debt at par and assuming the Revolutionary War debts of the states. They launched no attack on the Bank of the United States. They will recharter a bigger bank in the future. Consistent or inconsistent? Some of y'all are saying consistent, I hear inconsistent. Why would y'all say this is consistent? This bus would help us do what? Pay back debt. So that's consistent because he wants to pay back debt. How many of you say this is inconsistent? It is inconsistent. Why would this be inconsistent?
Because they didn't like the bank.
He didn't like the bank because of what interpretation? How did he interpret? Strict or loose?
Loose.
The bus was created by Hamilton with loose, right? But Jefferson believes in
Strict.
So this is consistent or inconsistent? Inconsistent. So this one's both. Can I quote one Jefferson to refute the other? Okay, so we know that this is consistent because it's going to lower debt. We know this one's inconsistent because what type of interpretation does he have?
Strict.
He's strict. Okay, he reduced the national debt. Swiss-born Albert Gallant proved to be an able Secretary of Treasury. Gallant agreed with Jefferson that the national debt was a bane rather than a blessing, and by the strict economy succeeded in reducing the debt substantially while balancing the budget. Consistent or inconsistent?
Consistent.
Consistent, because what does he want to do with the debt?
Reduce it.
Reduce it. The next one is he walked to the inauguration. Didn't use the customary pomp and of a horse-drawn coach. Jefferson strode by foot to the Capitol to his inauguration. He kept his inauguration simple and frugal. Consistent. Because most inaugurations, what happens? Is it just this? No, there's parties, there's galas, right? There's huge crowds. But he says, well, we don't want that much debt, right? So this is why he's being consistent, simple and frugal. I think 5 is missing here. It's somewhere else. Okay, 5, you see where it says new naturalization law? That's somewhere else. I don't know where it is in this thing. It's somewhere. It's missing. Okay, but we're going to look at 6. He kept funding at par, full value. Except for excising the excise tax, we've seen this one. Jefferson left the Hamiltonian framework essentially intact. He did not tamper with the Federalist programs for funding the national debt at par and assuming revolutionary debts of the states.
Consistent.
Okay, someone's saying okay, he's gonna pay off all the debts. You say it's consistent, right? Why would someone said this is inconsistent?
Because he didn't agree with Hamilton, right?
He didn't agree with Hamilton, and he wanted to get rid of this debt faster. Could he have done something else? What could he have done? Well, he does.
Oh, yeah.
Could he have said, I'm not going to pay any of it back and been done with the debt? Would it cause rebellion?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so we'll just leave it as consistent. But is it, some people are saying inconsistent. Is it going to increase our debt if he keeps it at full value? Okay, let's look at the next one. Pell-mell seating at dinners. Jefferson extended democratic principles to the etiquette. He established the rule of pell-mell sitting at official dinners. That is sitting without regard to rank. So I think about your house, right? I have a circular table at my house, so there's no head of the table or end of the table. But how many of you have a rectangular table? Usually who sits at the head of the table? Dad. Who sits at the other end? It's supposed to be who? Mom. And then the kids in the middle. When you have presidential stuff, we're all gonna see that at the head of the table, when it's a dinner, it's the president or the queen or the king at one end and the other second person, and then it goes in to the most important coming in to the least important in the middle. Have you ever heard at Thanksgiving there's like the big kids table, then they have the little kids table, and then they have like the parent table? Is that pell-mell seating? So he's sitting without regard to rank. Is this consistent or inconsistent? With what idea? He doesn't want to look like a what? A king. You got it right. This is consistent. He sent messages to Congress. Jefferson sent messages to Congress to be read by a clerk. Personal appearance in the Federalist manner suggested too strongly a monarchical speech from the throne. So he's sending his message to be read by someone else because he doesn't want to look like what? A king. So is this consistent or inconsistent? Consistent. And you could just refer to the reasoning we did before. He built a mosquito fleet. Not mosquitoes, right? That would be kind of weird. But what does he mean by mosquito? Small. As a result of the success of the small gunboats in the Triple-Tian War, Jefferson advocated for a number of little coastal craft jeffs, or mosquito fleet. He believed these fast but small vessels proved valuable in guarding the American shores and not need to embroil the Republican in diplomatic incidents on the high sea. About 200 tiny gunboats were constructed. Consistent or inconsistent?
Inconsistent.
Okay, why do y'all say inconsistent? What did he believe in?
No navy.
No navy. But then some people said consistent because what is he trying to keep us out of? War. So can I quote one Jefferson to refute another? Yes. So this is consistent because he's trying to keep us out of war, but it's inconsistent because he didn't want a navy. All right, the next one, he kept Federalist office holders. What party is he?
Federalist?
Democratic Republican. The triumph of Thomas Jefferson, Democratic Republicans, and the eviction of the Federalists marked the first party overturn in American history. The vanquished naturally feared that the victors would grab the spoils of office for themselves. But Jefferson, in keeping with his conciliatory inaugural address, showed unexpected moderation. To the dismay of his office-seeking friends, the new president dismissed few public servants for political reasons. So did he clean up house like Trump did?
No.
No, he kept the Federalists there. He says, patronage-hungry Jeffersonians, watch while the Federalist appointees growing old in office, grumbled, few will die, none will resign. So is this consistent or is this inconsistent? Ooh, I hear both. Hey, who is he keeping in office? And he's what? He's a Democratic Republican. Do the Federalists believe in his ideas of state government? So, is this inconsistent? Yes, because these people, he keeps Federalists that don't believe in Democratic Republicans. Some of you saying that this is consistent because what is he trying not to act like?
Partisan.
He's trying to act partisan and, not partisan, but he's trying not to act like a king, like he has no favorites. So we could say he's both. Do y'all see his problem? Okay, let's look at this next one. He pardoned the martyrs of the Sedition Act. At the outset, Jefferson was determined to undo the Federalist abuses begotten by the anti-French hysteria. He hated the Alien and Sedition Act, and they had already expired. The incoming president spiritedly pardoned the martyrs who were serving sentences under the Sedition Act, and the government remitted many fines. Do y'all remember sedition? What weren't they allowed to do? Speak out against, right? So, is this being consistent or inconsistent? Consistent, because what does he believe in? Freedom of speech, correct. Okay, let's look at the next one. Oh, wait. There's number 5, right? The new naturalization law. Jefferson put pressure on the Democratic Republicans to enact the new naturalization law. This new Naturalization Act of 1802 reduced the unreasonable requirements of 14 years of residency to the previous and more reasonable requirements of 5 years. So who are these people who are going to be getting naturalized? Coming in. Immigrants. What party would the immigrants go to? Federalist or the Democratic Republicans? So is this going to be consistent with his beliefs that we have people participate in politics, or is this inconsistent? This is consistent. It brings more people into the Democratic Republican Party. We're going to do one more and then we'll put the books up. Okay. He fought the Barbary pirates. Harsh realities forced Jefferson's principles to bend. Pirates of North African Barbary states had long made a national industry of blackmailing and plundering merchant ships that ventured into the Mediterranean. Preceding Federalist administrations have been forced to buy protection. Jefferson did not want to pay tribute, causing the Pasha Tripoli to declare war on the U.S. Jefferson, the non-interventionist, the pacifist, the critic of a big navy, and against shippers, reluctantly dispatched a navy to the shores of Tripoli. Jefferson was able to get a treaty of peace from Tripoli in 1805. Consistent or inconsistent? Hey, why do y'all think this is inconsistent? He doesn't want a big navy. Okay? Does anybody want to make an argument that this is consistent? Yes.
Well, he's trying to keep all the merchants alive.
And he's protecting what?
America's investment.
Free commerce.
Free commerce. There you go. So this is also consistent because he's protecting free trade. So can we quote one Jefferson to refute another? Alright, we're gonna finish this up next time. Please put the books back on the bookshelf. Please put them like the papers facing on the inside and the spine of the book on the outside.